Good morning, everyone. My name's Andrea Scheidley. I'm the AVP of DI Sales here at Illinois Mutual. I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today for our September Best Practices Forum. We have Jeff Wilson, our Eastern Regional Sales Manager, who's actually in the office with Doug Schelleberger, who they're going to be talking today about centers of influence and how Doug has helped grow his DI business by partnering with other centers of influence. So I'm very excited for this presentation today. I think you'll learn a lot of valuable information, not only about to get you thinking about other people that you can partner with to help grow your business, but also maybe some different plan designs that, thinking about how to work with other small business owners, maybe some longer term disability plans, and not just that simple as 1, 2, 3, 2-year benefit period. Illinois Mutual is very well known for that plan design, but we do have other opportunities to help you help different clients to really grow your business and make them a client for disability income and other sources there. So as we've learned from agents, all the feedback we get, everyone really loves these best practices forums because you want to hear from other agents and what's working for them. And I think today's session is going to be one of those that will be very valuable for you. So again, thanks so much for attending. If you have questions throughout the presentation, you can use the questions feature. Go ahead and ask those, and we'll try to manage that throughout as far as typing responses back. But at the end of the presentation, we'll have some time for Q&A, and we can ask those questions for Doug and Jeff or help answer them for you if they're not specific to them. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jeff and Doug. Thank you all. And Doug, thanks so much for being a partner with us today on this call.
Thank you, Andrea. Well, it's certainly my privilege to host today's forum on creating and maximizing centers of influence. And like Andrea mentioned, we have our featured speaker, Doug Schelleberger, CLU-CHFC. Doug has over 27 years in the insurance business, both as a personal producer, but also manages and runs Insurance Brokerage Alliance, which is based out of St. Pete, Florida. He also has a satellite office up in Western North Carolina, just north of Asheville, which is where we are today. So appreciate him taking the time out to join us. Their core business centers primarily around life and disability solutions for individuals and small, closely held businesses. Now, their strategy has really allowed them to push into larger, more sophisticated DI solutions, utilizing Illinois Mutual's customizable products and riders, and this is the primary topic of today. So like Andrea said, without further ado, let's dig into that approach a little more. So Doug, let's just kick this off by, if you could describe the type of company or organization that you primarily approach about being their go-to expert for insurance solutions.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate giving the opportunity to come in here and talk a little bit. Really, when we try to look for these centers of influence, we're really trying to focus in on firms or organizations that both know and recognize the need for disability insurance and the need for life insurance. So when we do this, we're really kind of focusing in specifically on CPA firms, P&C offices. We've even worked with a construction bond guy who basically looks at it and says, I'm going to be taking on this extreme liability of this guy completing the construction project. I need to make sure that he's going to be around to be able to follow through with it. So really, when we look for these centers of influence, the people that we want to focus in on is quite frankly the ones that know and understand the need, but just are not doing it. And it might be for a whole multitude of different reasons, but specifically, we pretty much have had our best success with CPA firms and quite a few P&C operations.
Yeah, what you're talking about there is also, we've seen a kind of a pivot, or not necessarily a pivot, but an inclusion of disability insurance to cover our small business loan.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
yeah, so a small business owner goes to the bank and wants to buy or get a loan for $500,000 to build out their business. Well, we know a lot of those banks will automatically say, well, where's the insurance? Because they want to get paid. And that's primarily has been historically on the life insurance side. But we're starting to see that become relevant and prevalent with a DI product as well. You see that as well?
I think that's a great point. And, you know, a lot of times what the first thing the banker will do is say, hey, you know what, you need to have this coverage. So that business owner looks at it and goes, well, I really don't know who to talk to. So they're going to their P&C guy or they're going to their CPA. And really, quite frankly, neither one of those guys know exactly how to go through the process of acquiring a DI policy or a life insurance policy for that matter as well.
Right, right. Well, I know every relationship is the approach is a little bit different, so it's not an in the box type thing. But do you have a basic or simple message that you convey to these CPAs, attorneys, etc., of why they need to partner with your firm, like your value prop?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a perfect example of that. You know, you sit down with a CPA firm and, you know, the guy's looking at it and going, you know, there's only so many hours in the week and I can only develop so many billable hours out of those hours that I'm working. So, you know, that what I bring to the table for them is, hey, let's look at a new revenue stream for you. Let's look at something that you're already recommending that your client do because you know the need is there. But quite frankly, for one reason or another, you're not doing that. And so, you know, it really becomes a matter of building a trust relationship with that person. Same thing goes with the P&C guys. You know, boy, you see it all the time. These P&C guys get caught up in the day-to-day operations of, you know, I had a car accident, I got to go file a claim, or, you know, I've had a flood in my house, so, you know, you're going to help me, you know, file that claim. So the P&C guys look at it and they're like, you know, I'm spending all my time doing this admin stuff. Where am I going to develop a new stream of revenue? That's really what our value proposition for these guys is let us help you. We don't want you to become an expert in DI or life insurance. We want you to be able to ask the right questions to be able to get your existing clients over to me so then I can take the wheel and then basically walk them through the process. You know, at the same time, what I do with these guys is I say, look, I'm not here just to take your clients away from you. My idea is I want you to be a partner in this deal with me. For the most part, your CPAs and your P&C guys, and even the construction bond guy that I was talking about earlier, most of these guys already have their licenses, but they're not using them. They're not utilizing them to the full extent of what they should be doing. And that is where I come in. I'm going to fill in, I'm going to backfill that need that they have because they're recommending these clients buy life insurance or buy disability insurance, but they're not selling it, or they're not doing a good job of getting those clients to understand the need for it. So, you know, it really becomes a trust issue and a partnership in the whole deal.
Right, good. That's great. You know, and to add on to that, you know, one of the things that I like about your approach is, you know, most CPA firms, for example, you know, they want to be able to handle and support and service more than one product line with their clients, right? Because that creates a more of a stickiness. So we all know, you know, sales 101, the more, you know, hooks you get into a client, the less likely they are to go somewhere else. So by you adding that to their portfolio or to their own value prop really kind of solidifies and helps them hang on to their clients as well. Correct?
Right. Yeah. And really, you know what, I mean, just take it a step further. That's a two-way street because, you know, as the insurance agent that's out there trying to convince these people to put a large amount of money in premiums into a DI policy, for example, I want to be able to say, hey, Mr. CPA, tell your client that this is something that you want and you need to have. and it really kind of that kind of becomes the expert advice to be able to say, hey, you know what, you're right, listen to what Doug has to say, buy the policy, this is the right thing for you. So, you know, again, it goes back to that whole team approach, and you're exactly right. You don't want to have you know, one person handling one aspect of the client's financial portfolio and another person doing another thing, unless we're all on the same team. It's all a team approach, and we're all trying to get to the same thing, which is to take care of all the client's needs.
Yeah, great. So with our portfolio, you've had a really great success in penetrating not only on the front end, creating those centers of influence, but also using our products to fit in the certain situations. So are there any product specifics or benefits or riders that are your go-to? Now, we know all relationships are different and every solution could be different, but are there certain key aspects of what we offer in the way of products and riders that you key in on?
You know, it's kind of funny that you say that, because really the reality of it is if you got a CPA firm or you got a P&C guy, there are other insurance agents that sell life insurance that are going to approach those guys and say, hey, you need to send your clients to me. You got to differentiate yourself, and really using Illinois Mutual's disability with the ROP. That's the differentiator right there, because really it's not that these guys don't understand DI. It's that they've never heard the story of, hey, you know what, if the client never goes on claim, all those premiums come back to the owner of the policy. So it becomes this situation where now we can kind of use this to not only get our foot in the door with some of these CPAs and the P&C operations, because they haven't heard that story before, but ultimately what we do is we look at that from the strategy of using that, especially with some of these small business owners who, you know, quite frankly, they look at this and they know they need the DI. This isn't something that's new to them. This isn't a new story to them. But the new story is, hey, you know what? I don't want to pay that in premium on that DI policy. Well, guess what, Mr. Client? If you don't go on claim, you're going to get all your money back. So, you know, you look at that kind of that lead in as far as what is something that they haven't heard before. The ROP story is just it's so powerful, and it's something that people just don't know out there, and that's really what our job has been, is to kind of bring that along, you know, and we look at that and realizing there's some parameters, especially in the small, speaking specifically of the small business arena, you know, there's certain parameters where maybe the owner of the business is a little bit older and they can't get that ROP. Okay, so let's say maybe one of their kids is in the business and going to take the business over. Why don't we put, instead of putting it on the owner of the policy of the business, why don't we put it on, you know, one of the kids that's within the business, so that when it gets a little bit later on, that kid's got a substantial amount of ROP money that could create liquidity to help the exit strategy of the owner of the policy. And, you know, we've also run into situations where, again, using this idea of ROP, maybe that business has a superstar salesman who is driving a tremendous amount of revenue for the company. Why not go to that person and say, hey, you know what, the company is going to buy a disability policy on you in case, you know, anything happens to you. We can kind of give you some, keep you on payroll even if you become disabled. But more importantly, if you don't go on claim at age 65 or age 67, suddenly the company's getting a whole bunch of money back with the ROP rider. We could use that as maybe some type of an executive bonus program where that money then gets sent back out to that key employee. In other words, using a disability policy almost like golden handcuffs, something that, you know, quite frankly has been around the industry for years. But have we really used a disability policy with ROP specifically for golden handcuffs? So it's an idea like that you want to be able to bring to the table to these guys, because it's got to be something they haven't heard before. If you just go in there and you just say, hey, send me your best clients, I don't think you're going to get very far with a lot of these CPA firms and PNC guys.
Right, exactly. So just to switch gears just a little bit, as we've seen, the insurance industry has really come a long way in the last few years, embracing and creating usable technology, not only for the agent, but for the end consumer as well. What are your thoughts on technology platforms and their use?
It's kind of funny. I'm kind of an old school guy. I'm used to doing stuff on paper. But the embarrassing part of this industry is when you don't fill out a form correctly, or you don't get the right information for the client. It's this piecemeal approach that we have to go back and forth to the client, and really, quite frankly, it gives the client an out a lot of times. And I've been down that road where it seemed like we got the sale done only to get screwed up because I didn't get the proper form signed, and then the client's like, yeah, maybe I don't need this. The beautiful part about the electronic app is it forces us to get the information right, because if we don't have the information right, it's not going to allow us to submit the application in. So I love the idea of the electronic app. I've completely switched off of the idea of doing a paper app now. I want to do everything electronically. I want to try to get even the Part B done on the electronic app, because it just speeds the process along, and it makes it so that you don't have this situation where, okay, today I got to get this information, tomorrow I got to go back to the client for this, and the next day I got to go back for them for something completely different. It does help the whole process of, for just to be quite frank, it helps avoid the embarrassment of looking like you don't know what you're doing. So I'm a big proponent of the electronic app right now. It's been a lifesaver in a couple of situations, just simply because it forces me to get the right information to get it done properly the first time.
Yeah, and I can remember when you first came on board with us, you were adamant about doing everything electronic.
Yeah.
And I kind of laughed, and I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense to me, not only from making sure everything's correct, but from a time standpoint. I mean, that's a really cool feature with the electronic app. You don't have to drive to Atlanta, Georgia from Asheville to take an app. You can do it online. So yeah, appreciate that comment on that. One of the things that I think has allowed you to be very successful is right up front, your value proposition is transparency, collaboration, and total support. And you really go from A to Z. You're involved, you're engaged. You're not a one-stop guy. Send me like you said, send me your best clients and I'll do all the insurance. No, that's not how you operate. And it all really centers around that word that you come back to a lot, is trust. So can you elaborate a little bit on how you go about that?
Yeah, it's that total support issue is really a big one, because this is a partnership. This is a partnership between the agent, and it's a partnership with the company, and it goes, just like we want to service our clients and have that trust relationship, we need to have that same relationship with the company that we're working with as well. I'm going to, give a big shout out to the underwriting department over at Illinois Mutual. There was a situation, and I'll get specific about it. There was a situation where I looked at a self-employed person's tax return, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out how much was going to be the maximum amount of benefit that was going to be available to this person. And so I talked to one of the underwriters over there, and he said, hey, just email over to me the last 2 years. Let me take a look at the tax returns, and then we'll come back with it. So I felt that this was a much better process than me just guessing. I mean, I could have put any number in there as far as what I thought the benefit was, but it may or may not have been the appropriate amount, based on what this guy would qualify for. So the underwriter took, and again, I don't want to use his name, but he took a look at it, and he says, I think the benefit is going to be X. And I said, okay, good. So, at least now I know. He said, but let me tell you something. He goes, this guy's a self-employed guy. Are you looking at a business overhead expense policy for him as well? And I said, I hadn't even thought about it. I said, what can we get on that? And he said, well, based on the expenses that I see here in the tax returns, we can offer him an additional amount of coverage on a BOE policy. And I said, man, this is exactly what it's all about. When the home office is there to support you, not only from the standpoint of the admin stuff, of trying to get the policy placed and all that stuff, but also can help you with maximizing the value that you bring back to that client. That's really what we're talking about as far as that trust relationship. So when the home office is on the same side as you, it gives you a lot more confidence when you're representing that company, basically to be able to go back out to that client. Because like I said before, I don't want to be embarrassed. There is nothing worse than being embarrassed to the client. And, when you've got the home office on the same side as you, it's going to certainly limit the possibility that you're going to get embarrassed.
Right. So if someone is looking to develop these types of relationships with firms, are there certain characteristics that you look for when you're prospecting? In other words, do you have a vetting process? Because not all centers of influence are going to really fit your model, nor our model as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
This actually goes back to just going back and mining your own book of business. For every one of those small business owners that you work with, I guarantee you that they have a real good relationship with their P&C guy. Maybe the P&C guy handles their business liability insurance. Maybe that P&C guy handles the insurance on their delivery trucks or their service trucks or what have you. Start there. I mean, when that person that you already have as a client, as a small business owner, has that relationship with their P&C guy, I guarantee you that P&C guy has other relationships that are just like the one that you've got. So you want to be able to we're all looking for a warm introduction. We all want to be able to say, hey, you know what? Here's a connection. There's a relationship here because my guy is also your guy. So use that. The same goes with a CPA firm. I find that, quite frankly, the CPA firms and the P&C operations are probably the two easiest things to do. We're sitting in an office right now with one of my CPA relationships. I got this relationship because I happened to be talking to an existing client about setting up a retirement plan for his small business. In this case, he said, I really like what you're saying, but I want my CPA to sign off on it before I do anything. And I said, absolutely. I want your CPA's phone number. I want you to let him know that I'm going to be giving him a call. So you know what? I called up that CPA firm, talked to the guy. He said, I love what you're saying. I love everything about this. And flat out, he asked me by the end of that conversation, are you interested in doing this for some of my other clients? So it really is one of those things where the relationships are there. We've just got to maximize them. So it really becomes, and in my mind, the easiest and simplest way to do this, mine your own clients. Those clients have those relationships, and those clients are going to get you those warm introductions into these ideal situations where you can really build that, again, trust relationship.
Right, but thank you. And as we know, it's one of my favorite sayings, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So it takes time to develop these relationships, but you have to be persistent and consistent. And I think you do that big time. So that's allowed you to really slowly develop these really strong centers of influence that will be beneficial not only for you guys, but for the centers of influence as well, because it is a two-way street.
This is not something that happens overnight. These are relationships that are cultivated over an extended period of time. And, the reality of it is sometimes you find that these people turn out to be some of your best friends. It's amazing how you can kind of develop these relationships, and suddenly you're out playing golf with them on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Andrea, do you have any questions you want us to chime in on or try to answer on your end?
Well, thank you both so much. This has been really a great session. And I actually just took down some notes. I was going to comment on a couple of things, Doug. And if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and ask those now. I don't see we have anything out there yet, but that doesn't mean anything. They could be coming in. A few things that I wanted to comment on is with working with the partners that you have chosen, the CPAs and the P&C agents and agencies. The great thing about the CPA is not only do they have great clients, but obviously those clients that they work with, they are very concerned about their financial planning, right? They know that that's their person they go to. They want their sign off, like that example that you gave. So I feel like those people are going to be committed to purchasing disability income insurance, and they understand the need for it. The other side of that is work with the CPA is you have easy access to getting financial documentation when it's needed. So that's always makes the underwriting process a little bit smoother there too. And the big thing with the P&C agents partnering there, I really love that because we work with so many P&C agents across the country. And I can't tell you how many times they see the opportunity and the need to offer disability income to their clients, but they're so reactive in their business transactions, it's hard for them to actually focus on it. So to be able to make that connection with a P&C agent and show them that you can help be a partner with them in their business, you want to help them grow their business, retain their retain their clients to stay with them, it's a huge value proposition there. So great job there. And one other one that we've always kind of talked about, especially in the last few months, just as another idea for everyone, is partnering with real estate agents. Real estate agents not only could be a good client for you, they're the best occupation class for us, as long as we can get financials there. But the other thing there too is they could be a great center of influence because how many clients are they working with that just purchased a home or in the last year have purchased a home? There's great conversations to be had about making sure that they're going to have a disability policy to protect that mortgage so they don't lose their home, if something were to happen to them that they love, they're growing their family in and so on. So just a couple other ideas there. And then the other thing that you mentioned, Doug, as far as minding your book of business to find centers of influence or looking at small business owners and talk to them about who they work with. I love that. We've all heard the 80-20 rule, really focusing on that top 20% of your business that you have a lot of success with and growing from there, rather than all of us just spinning our wheels, to find more clients. Working with who you already have, I think, is fantastic.
Actually, thank you for mentioning that, because the idea of working with realtors is a really great idea that, quite frankly, I hadn't really thought about in the past, but it all goes back to that whole thing of people that understand the need and being able to utilize their understanding of the insurance aspect of a financial plan. And I work with a couple of realtors, and so I'm going to go back and actually see if I can't get them to get me some more clients.
Well, good. I'm glad that I brought that up today.
And Andrea, if you don't mind, let me,
Yeah.
you mentioned something that I think is worth noting, is talking about how Doug goes about gathering data. We've got our awesome little streamlined underwriting where certain limits we don't ask for financials or medicals. Doug always asks while he's there. He asked for the whether we need them or not. You ask for 2 years tax returns, and then if the underwriter comes back and says we need 2 years tax, he's got them, so he doesn't have to make that awkward call back to the client to say, hey, can you find your last 2 years tax returns? So he does that up front. I like a preemptive strike, I guess. But I think that's a great practice.
And I think this all goes back to that whole idea of having this piecemeal approach of having to go back and to quote Family Guy, it really grinds my gears to have to use this situation where, okay, I forgot to ask you about this, and I forgot to ask you about that. And, again, you don't want to have the client questioning why they're doing what they're doing. So it's better to get all this information up front. They know what the process is, and you've gathered that information, and you can get whatever is needed over to the underwriter. So it does, in the long run, really help the whole process run a lot more smoothly.
Absolutely. And that was actually my next point was I appreciate how you said, just the trust relationship, because that really does allow you to be the expert. You are already working with the underwriters. You've done your field underwriting. You know what questions you needed to ask in advance. And it's going to help that entire process just be so much more smooth and seamless for you, the client. You're more reputable with the CPA or whoever your center of influence is. So I appreciate the extra work you do on the front end just to make it a much better experience. And I hope everyone can take that away from today as far as some tips to make the underwriting process more enjoyable for all. So we do have a couple questions here. I'll go ahead and jump in. So Douglas Kosarek had asked, I know that we don't give tax advice, but can you give us a quick idea of what the tax ramifications would be on the return of premium on BOE and or the owner's DI plan, depending upon if an employer or employee paid?
And you just hit the nail on the head. I do not give tax advice, really. I kind of leave that back to the CPA firm. I do know that before the return of premium is sent out from Illinois Mutual, they send out a letter basically asking the client to verify whether the premium on the policy has been deducted from taxes. So, Illinois Mutual is doing a pretty good job of keeping track of whether that ROP is going to be a taxable event or not based on the deductibility of the premium. So, I really kind of leave that back to the CPA. I really want to be able to say, look, I'm just going to provide you with the cash back. And for lack of a better term, it's just giving them liquidity when they're 65 or 67 years old. How the taxation's handled on that, I'm going to just push that right back to the CPA.
That's a great way to go about it. And Douglas did say that that's helps a bunch and appreciates that because it helps build the credibility with the CPA as well.
Correct.
So thank you for that. And Douglas had also mentioned that commercial realtors is a great idea because they do have a vested interest in recommending business overhead expense. So another good thought there as far as how to work with those centers of influence. But one more thing, Kent Turner had asked, and if you're comfortable sharing this, Doug, that's great. If not, if you want to reach out to him separately, I can connect you to for the contact information. But he had just asked as far as what percentage or how much percentage of do you share of the commissions with your centers of influence? Or do you have a?
No, I think that's a very reasonable question. I mean, obviously, the relationship is going to dictate that. How much work are you putting into it? Quite frankly, if I have either a CPA or a P&C shop that is actively involved in the process, and that is getting me the data that I need and helping me close the sale, I have no problem going 50-50 with these guys. And they've been very receptive to it because, again, this is a revenue stream that, quite frankly, they're not utilizing. I have had situations where, quite frankly, the P&C guy has done almost all of the work. I'm giving him the ideas. I'm giving him the illustrations and things like that. So in a case like that, if I'm not really doing a whole lot of the work, then we can negotiate it. And he's gonna, obviously want all of it, which I usually don't do that. But you know what? It's really kind of a moving target. It's going to be based on whatever the situation in the sales process is and how much effort each person is putting into it. Look, I'm a firm believer of you do the work, you get paid. You don't do the work, why are you getting paid? And so, based on that, it really is kind of one of those things where it can be a moving target, but a very common one is just a 50-50 split. It makes it very easy. And again, remember what I said earlier, most of these people already have their licenses. to be able to sell life and DI. So I'm really pushing for them. As a matter of fact, I've actually helped CPAs get their license just specifically so we can split these cases. I'm not going to sit here and be the one that collects all the premium and then pays them out as a subcontractor and 1099s them. I'm not doing all that work. I want them licensed. I want them on the application. That way they've got a vested interest on the policy as well. Good question, though.
Yeah, and thanks very much for that feedback, Doug. That's the beauty, I feel like, of developing these relationships is you can build it to be what makes sense, for you, for the center of influence, for the clients, and back to kind of some of those PNC agents, if they don't have the time for it, or they just want to bring up the conversation and refer it all to you, great. That'll work too. Then you can figure out a different comp structure, but there is so much flexibility there. All right. Well, I don't see that we have any other questions, but we can keep it open another minute or so. But Doug, I definitely, want to thank you so much. And Jeff Wilson, thanks for being there with Doug to ask these questions. And I thought brought us a very valuable best practices forum today. I hope everyone on the call enjoyed the information and just gave you some ideas to how you can grow your business, and even if it's not just for disability income, think about other life partners and things like that. But disability, obviously, we want you to focus on the most. But there's just so much potential with partnering with other people to make a difference in your business. All right.
Perfect.
Well, I don't see any other questions. If we have anything that comes in afterwards, we'll kind of work on that. But thank you again for your time today, Doug and Jeff, and thank you all for joining the presentation today. We will be back on October 6th for our next Best Practices Forum, which will be with Chuck Glover. And he's going to talk to us about how he brings up the DI conversation at open enrollment with his health insurance clients. So I hope you can join us on that day to just keep learning about different ideas and ways to grow your business and work with other agents or partners to help grow your business. All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.